Hey, Kevin. How fun it is to see some familiar faces. All good. Good to see you.
Well, thanks for the stuff. I'm working on it.
Sweet. Welcome, everyone. For those of you who are back, good to see you again. For those of you who are new, it's nice to meet you. Excited to go through talking about a little bit bigger picture. Everything we've talked about, or what I usually talk about, is just content. But I wanted to do a session on building a more holistic B2B growth system that touches on content, but then feeds into a larger outbound and nurturing system as well. A lot of people just focus on content and that generates, some traction and activity. But if we're not connecting the dots, then we're really missing out on a lot of opportunity. Um, we will be going through the 5 frameworks for pipeline that compounds. For those of you who have joined one of my sessions before, I love questions and being able to kind of interact with you guys. So please feel free to drop questions in the chat. We have Charles who will be fielding questions and making sure that I'm answering everyone. Let me pull up the chat window just so I can make sure I can see everyone's questions and we can dive into things. So, as I said, a lot of our sessions usually revolve around content and, maybe even more specifically LinkedIn content, but how we are using content to share our message and speak to our ICP on the services or the product that we are solving for our buyer. But if you're just doing that in a silo, you're really missing out on a lot of opportunity. And so today I want to run through the B2B growth system, and this will be a series of 5 frameworks that helps compound your pipeline growth. And really, what that means is we don't want you relying on a single channel, a lucky quarter, consistently on manual follow up. And when you start to scale that up to 200 plus leads, it can get exhausting. And so, how do we build the system? And how do we build a series of systems that all work together to help us do this really efficiently? For those who don't know me, my name is Will. I started Catalyst, which is a go to market agency. We work with B2B tech founders, mostly around SaaS, but have worked with a lot of different verticals as well. And our primary focus is building content systems that helps you warm up your buyers. And so when you do outreach, they're already ready to talk. You've already built that trust, and you're not starting from zero every time. We've had a chance to work with a lot of fantastic, fast growing tech companies in the space. And, I do these weekly webinars to just share some of the learnings that we're seeing across our clients and being able to, give back and share some knowledge. And of course, if you ever need our support, we're here to help with your specific needs. So today we're going to go through 6 sessions or 6 sections. We're going to talk through the problems, kind of what's at stake if we aren't building this. So, talking about how B2B pipeline can be fragile and unpredictable. We'll talk about those 4 different channels, talk about resources, making sure we have an evergreen system set up, the booking system, and then talking about how the full loop comes back and works and continues to build on itself. So, let's dive into the problem. Main problem that we are really addressing with all of these systems is the core fact that at any given moment, most of 95% of your buyers are not ready to buy. And so when you do outreach or when you post a piece of content and they see it, it's not that they necessarily are saying no, it's just not the right time. And I think this is where a lot of people get discouraged pretty early on is like, it's such a consistency game, and it's such a game of staying top of mind where you can reach out to someone once and maybe they're just not ready to buy your solution today or they haven't experienced that pain point. And so they see that as a missed opportunity. But what really happens is in 3 to 18 months, what you want to be is the solution that when they experience that pain point or experience that problem, they know that you are the right person to solve their problem. And so if we kind of take marketing and we take go to market through this lens, it's no longer, you know, the emphasis is no longer reaching people at that specific right moment and perfectly timing it. That's a near impossible task. But what we can do is stay top of mind and stay relevant to our buyer through that 3 to 18-month cycle. And the funnel is no longer a funnel anymore. So probably what you have learned or what has done historically has been seeing an ad, visiting the website, booking a call, and closing. We are no longer operating in a linear funnel, especially with buyers doing more and more research before they book a sales call or book a demo. And so what actually happens is, they'll see a LinkedIn post, they don't engage, they go to your website, download a resource, maybe that's 6 months later, they don't engage with it after that, get a cold email for you, opens it, doesn't click anything, maybe attends a webinar, and then finally reaches out to book a call, right? We're getting into this, we're in, and it continues to be more of a black box of attribution and tracking. There are definitely some ways to track it, but we have to remember that this journey is just so non-linear that all we have to do and the way we have to frame it is thinking about building an orbit around our business, right? How do we show them all of these opportunities to opt in, to remind them about how we are solving their pain points? So we want to stop pushing people through different stages of a funnel, but rather build this kind of gravitational pull closer and closer into our field. And an orbit is really just building a steady presence in the buyer's professional world. You do this through content, resources, and adding consistent amount of value. And what this does, it builds authority and trust over time. So for when they do have that experience, when they do experience that pain point, you are the obvious answer for them to reach out to. And so we have warm outreach, which is really, the real conversion mechanism. Content and cold outreach is a way to build connections at scale. And then paid ads is a way to amplify the reach of what's already working. And all of those things bring people closer and closer to your warm connection pool. So let's talk about these 4 channels a little bit more in depth. There are only 4 ways to tell people about what you sell and what you do. What we found is most companies only do 2, maybe even 1. You should be doing all 4, depending on what stage you're at. But the one that really matters is warm outreach. So this is converting warm connections into meetings. This is people that have already entered your orbit, who already know who you are, who already trust you, and converting them through warm outreach. Then we have cold outreach. You guys are probably familiar with this, but really what we're doing is we're interrupting someone. We're placing our message in their email inbox or LinkedIn inbox, telling them about what we do, right? Cold, low trust, but it is an effective way to tell more people about what we're doing at scale. Posting content is another way to pull people in, but it's a little bit less scalable as you're really limited to how the algorithm is distributing your content. But this is how we build the most authentic form of authority, and build warm connections at scale. And then we can run paid ads. So this is amplifying the reach of cold outreach and content a little bit further. So it's a multiplier. This isn't the foundation. This is really the last thing that you wanted. So talking about warm outreach, this is the crux of where B2B sales and B2B conversion happens. This is where you're reaching the people who already know you. And you've built up this trust by leading with value over an extended period of time. So if we talk about who these people are and you're, um, you know, listing them out by tiers, we have past customers or churn customers. So they already know what it's like to work with you. You already have context on their business. Tier two is referrals and mutual connections. A lot of early stage businesses focus primarily on this tier where, your best clients, you ask them for intros. You can name drop mutual connections, right? This is a great way to grow your business, but it runs out quickly and it doesn't scale. LinkedIn connections of people who liked or comment on your post. So these are people who have been engaging with the organic content that you're putting out already. And we can identify these individuals and find more of them through the engagement activity on content. Then we have leads who have downloaded a resource. So, if you're putting out lead magnets or you're putting out something that requires them to opt in via email, this could be a newsletter. This is another person who is, opting in to receive more information from you. And so, how we want to set this up is we want to be tracking all of these different individuals and types of buyers through this warm list. And so, we can build this list through exporting LinkedIn connections, really making sure that we're filtering by ICP to make sure that we're only capturing and engaging with the people who are actually qualified and the correct buyer type. And when you reach out to these people, what makes this so effective is they've already given you permission to talk to them in some regard. So if they've downloaded a resource, if they've engaged with your content, if they're a mutual connection, obviously if they're a past customer, you already have a rapport with them. They already trust you. They already know who you are. And so your outreach message can be a lot more simple, a lot more casual, and you're not trying to jam a whole lot of information down their throat. It becomes much more conversational and much more friendly. And so it can be something, again, we're always providing value where you're simply just saying, hey, just saw your engagement with this post. I put this resource together on a topic and I think it's relevant. Is it worth sending over? Now, a lot of people try to use the same message as a cold outreach, and it doesn't work because they don't know who you are. When you say, "Hey, I saw you engage with this post," and they're a cold connection, that's in the category of like I've been tracking and monitoring you, and it gets a little bit creepy. It works if it's a warm connection because you have some trust or some credibility already built with the individual. Then you can send additional resources. We can get into, everything tying back to this resource bank, later on. But all you want to do is consistently provide value and stay top of mind. Remember, 95% of your buyers won't be in a state of ready to buy. And so you want to spread this out over time to consistently provide value um, as you get to, build that trust and rapport with them. Channel two, cold outreach. So sending a connection and trying to, again, make that cold connection is not the same as making a meeting. You can't ask for a meeting on first touch. You have to build trust over time, and that trust has to be established. So, this is going to be your longest. This person is furthest away from your orbit. You are literally inviting them into your orbit. And so we have to do that with some social respect. Now, LinkedIn and cold email are the two probably most prominent ways to do this at the moment. And I'll go through kind of how we see the most effective for both. So for LinkedIn, definitely seeing the highest connection and acceptance with a blank connection request. Now, this is a new model of doing it. A lot of, kind of the old best practices was pitching right away. But the delineation between people are less uh, about their connection requests now as maybe they used to. The norm of LinkedIn before was a connection request was like, I actually know this person or I've worked with them minus follow versus like followers. But the platform is very much adopted. And as it's become more of a social network, connection request is kind of the standard. So connection request with no message, it's just like, hey, let's build this rapport, let's build this relationship. If you go in with a hard pitch on that first one, it is much more likely to not be accepted. But then what you want to do is not pitch, but provide some value. So share a resource, share an invite to a webinar you're doing, invite them to something, an event you're hosting, a webinar you're hosting. Maybe you have a podcast, invite them on that. You want to provide value to them so they build an association with you and getting something from you. A standard kind of follow up sequence from here is about following up with a question or a second resource. So, were you able to take a look at that resource? Was it valuable? Any feedback? Or you can just continue to send more and more resources. And then instead of pitching, just letting them know that, what you're there for and, who you are and how you might be able to help. You want to plant that seed. So again, when they go, 6 months from now, they go, wow, I really want to, start scaling up my content or my LinkedIn content. Oh, I remember that guy sent me the, 90-day strategy, a few months ago. I wonder where he was, right? It left a good taste in their mouth. They didn't feel overly sold to. And they can go back and find those resources when it's, relevant for them. We usually don't give buyers enough credit in this. They're very savvy, and they, get pitched a million times a day. So the last thing you want to do is another pitch. Cold email works a little bit differently. LinkedIn, at least you have some trust and credibility with your profile. This is why profile optimization is so important, right? So if you get a connection request, the first thing you're doing is probably going to their page and seeing, who they are and what they're about. So you have some credibility. With a cold email, you have none. You are just an email. Maybe it's not even your email if you're really doing this at scale. You're just some random person showing up in their inbox today. Something they have to, something on their list of things to do that they have to get through, right? Everyone likes to clear their inbox as much as possible. So all the best way to do this is not pitch right away. You don't have the right to do that yet, but you can ask. Like, imagine on the street, "Hey, excuse me, right? I've got something that might be of value to you. Uh, is it okay if I send it? Is this the right email to send it to? Something on your radar?" Right? Like, let's try to ask permission to understand if we are able to do it versus just trying to, you know, cram everything down their throat. Hopefully they say yes, right? The real goal of a cold email at this stage is just getting that permission, getting them to opt in, essentially what they're doing. And we still want to lead with value. So making sure that we're delivering value over the next 4 to 7 days, sending a resource, and most importantly, it's like, hey, why is this valuable to you? This is where signals become so important. Hey, you guys just raised a round. I can assume I assume you have this problem. Make it more tailored. The whole idea of personalization and outbound isn't to be like, you work at this company and you have this role, right? We don't want to repeat back the things that they already know about themselves. Where the value comes in with personalization is actually inferring and showing them a blind spot that they might not be seeing. And then sending a resource that solves that blind spot. And again, the idea here is to just kind of let them know that you're out there and on their radar. Now, the third channel is posting content. Posting content is the most effective way to build trust at scale, to build credibility without being salesy. Because the best content is when you do something and you just talk. And so what you're doing is providing value, or what you should be doing is providing value in every post that you create that solves something that your ICP is either aware of and actively trying to solve, or even better yet, open their eyes to a problem that they haven't experienced yet and preemptively solving it. But if you're posting content without a capture system, you're essentially starting from scratch every time as well. And so what we want to do is build a system around our content and where we're posting consistently, but then also building ways for people to opt in who want to. In an ideal world, people are just taking time out of their day to send you a DM if they see stuff that they like. But that's a little bit too much friction for this to happen at scale. And so what we want to do is be able to give them things that they can opt into. And right now, the best trend on LinkedIn is like the comment opt in. So we're giving them a low friction way to say, hey, I want more of the information that you're talking about. They're expressing that by commenting a specific keyword. And that's them saying, hey, we want to know more about what you're doing. What this also does is it gives you the invitation to send them a DM, right? So they're saying, we want more. You're able to DM me. And also, more comments you get on a post, the more that drives algorithmic reach. So it's going to go out to more people. Their followers are going to see that they left a comment, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when you send that resource, you want to be able to capture it and make sure that you have a way to take that email and ingest it into your nurturing system. And now they're in your orbit. They'll continue to see your LinkedIn posts. Hopefully, you're sending them some nurturing emails, so they'll see you in email. And when you're sending those emails on nurturing, it's not a cold outbound, right? They already know who you are. They remember why that you have their email, et cetera. It just creates a better experience for them overall. And then ads. I've been getting a lot of questions about LinkedIn ads recently. We need to think about ads as a multiplier of the things that are already working. A lot of people try to use ads as a foundation. And while maybe it potentially works, it's going to be really, really expensive in those first few months, and you're going to spend thousands of dollars without getting much results. And so it's better to use the other channels. Content is the best, but you could use it for, cold outreach as well to try to understand things about like who's the ICP that's resonating most with and, what messaging are they resonating with. And so when we think about it from a content perspective, we use content, it's free to post, it's free to test ideas. The algorithm will tell you what is good and what's not. And so when you post content and you have a high performer, the first thing you should do if you want to get into ads is set up a retargeting campaign. And so run ads to people who already know you. So people who've engaged with your content once, only about 2 to 5% of your audience will see a post every time you post it. And so what you're doing is you're using ads to be able to show that to more and more of your audience. You can do this with a pretty small budget of like $20 to $40 a day. Um, Again, ads you want to let run for a few weeks before making any massive change to it. But always use the creative. Ads is a creative game at this point because all the ads platforms, LinkedIn, Meta, are really, really good at finding your buyer. Don't try to fool the algorithm. They've been spending years to perfect it because they more consistently they can put you in front of the right buyer or your message in front of the right buyer. The better of an experience you have, the more money you spend, right? That is their business model. Whereas your job is the creative. And so use organic content to test creative to then put ad spend for retargeting. The second phase of ads is once that's working is we use it to reach more people. So if they're performing organically, we want to now try to find more people to bring into our orbit, right? So use it for top of funnel amplification. Do this for reach. This is going to be a more expensive ad strategy, but essentially what we're doing is we are scaling what's working and using it to find a lookalike audience based off of what's been effective and what's been working for you already. All of these channels should be directing people to one specific place, and it is not booking a call. It is a resource matrix. It is a collection of resources that help move buyers through the funnel at their own speed. There are three main types of resources that you can create. All of them should tie into a specific pain point that your buyer is experiencing, and they are not all created equal, but you need to have all three. Information is like the most standard and, straightforward resource. This is probably what you have on your blog. Maybe you've done like a video walkthrough of your product. maybe a tutorial or something. This is table stakes. Most of this is not net new information originally created by you guys or your company. And so while it is valuable and can have some, secondary benefits like SEO and keyword and AEO now, it is not a resource it typically is not a resource that will move your buyer through the funnel. What we see a lot currently on LinkedIn, if you spend some time, everyone's posting frameworks and guides, Claude code, template packs, things like that. That would fall into the implementation bucket here. So information is just consuming information. You learn more. That's great. Implementation gives people something to use. So it's a step up. They now understand it and they can do something about it. That's great. Checklist, template, these are great and can really work effectively as a middle funnel style of asset and help people move to being more convinced that you are the right person to provide and answer their solution. Now, outputs are probably the highest value asset that you can create by actually doing a piece of the work for them. This would probably be more advanced Claude code skills, like sharing skills packs that can actually take action on their behalf. This could also be like a calculator. ROI calculators are still really effective way to show people what it would be like to work with your service. Scorecards are always good as well. Uh, Generators, you see people creating like custom strategies with AI. A lot of these outputs have been kind of elevated with the fact that you can pre-program AI or create a skill set to be able to create these. But these are something that like check off one or two steps of the process of working with you. These are really high value. And essentially, you want to build all three because if you're still, maybe you're problem aware, still trying to figure out solution and information's good, an implementation is good, something that they can take action off of, and then they'll move through the output side of things. And essentially, what you want to do is have all of these available um, based off of the specific ICP problems and pillars that you are creating content around, that you are speaking to, and that your problem solves. So, what this looks like in practice, this is an example for a fraud prevention company. And so their core pillars that were, the problems that we're solving for the ICP are reducing chargebacks, improving approval rates, and aligning fraud and finance teams. And so now we want to create information implementation output of these three. So an information example would just be a guide on how chargebacks are categorized. The implementation version of that would be a template, which is a dispute response pack. An output would be a calculator. So seeing how chargeback costs are estimated. You can see that if you break out the key services that you provide or the problems that you're solving for as a software, it's really easy to be able to create a mass scale of these. These will all live in your resource gallery. And so when we were talking about providing value at all of those individual stages earlier on, all of these are providing value based off of different stages of awareness and where they are in their buying journey. If you're still trying to understand how chargebacks are categorized, you are very early in your buying journey. And so there's a correlation between as they move through these different types of assets to correlate to what part of their journey they're ready to do. And so all of your warm outbound, all of your content, all of your ads should be providing value through these. So it's very important to build out a robust resource gallery. Now, a lot of people are like, I already have a blog, or I've created this calculator, or we've created an infographic, or we have case studies. You might have some of it, but it's probably not as comprehensive as you need it. A lot of the teams that we talk to have really over indexed in creating information resources, especially if they, had a robust SEO strategy. A lot of that is just very information based. Video guides, people are creating those and thinking that's sufficient. Where with AI tools like Loom and Riverside, it's so easy for people to make tutorials now or screen recordings. Again, that has all become table stakes. Then they're creating content based off of what's easy to produce. So we really need to go a layer deeper and understand what your ICP is and what they're needing at each decision stage. The worst of all is maybe they'll spend, a week or 2 weeks putting this resource together and posting it once and then never posting it. These are things that you should be posting consistently on whatever outbound channel that you're doing. If it's content, you can reference it every week. If you look at the really aggressive LinkedIn creators, they're posting a new resource every day, but they're usually cycling through, 10 to 15 of them. They're just rotating through them every day, constantly providing value, constantly sharing something that their ICP can see because they understand that only 2 to 5% of your audience will see every post that you do. And then maybe you're sharing if you're not actually capturing any leads on the back end. You're pushing people to your website, but you're not looking at who's engaging with the content on social, who's leaving comments, not doing a comment gate, etc. And so your action items from this are to map your 3 topic pillars. If you followed some of my other LinkedIn content resources before, these would be your core beliefs. And they really are supposed to answer what problems does your ICP need to solve? If have an established business, if you guys have already created some stuff, I would start there. I always like to reuse something before you go create something net new. So audit what you already have. Do you already have anything with that is worth that you're able to implement into this? Could be blogs, could be internal SOPs, it could be resources that you share during a sales call. All of those are good potential resources that can be adapted into this. Then I would identify your highest priority gap. What resources would a warm prospect want right now? This is a great tip for everyone who's starting fresh. Create the resources for people closest to your orbit. So, back to this idea of building a gravitational field, a lot of people start with top of funnel because, of course, we want to reach more people. But if you build your resource pack from people who are closest to convert, A, you can send them to people who are on the fence now. B, as you build them, you kind of are building for a wider and wider audience. So then once you build one, use it as a resource for a month, distribute it for 4 channels. You can use the same resource, change the hook, change the title, change the packaging, right? The information, just like a LinkedIn post, can stay essentially the same as long as you package it slightly differently. It definitely can have an extended shelf life. And so do some testing on just one and then continue to build them out over time. Now, we have resources. We're telling people about our resources. We're building trust. People are loving our content. They're engaging whenever they see it. We've brought people into our orbit. They're in our orbit. Now what? And this is another key component of what we're seeing not enough companies doing. Most people have no evergreen nurture system. These are people in your orbit. How do we keep them engaged? How do we keep our name top of mind? Because it's always easier to keep those people more engaged and top of mind than it is bringing new people into our orbit. And so if we were using a concept of 100 leads, right? Let's just say you paid for 100 leads or you have 100 leads available to you. We know that only about 5% are ready to make a purchasing decision today. And so that means every time we do that, every time we reach 100 people, we're saying, no, the other 95%, they're just it's not ready yet. We don't need them. We'll go find more people. We'll keep go finding that 5%. But if you're able to build a nurturing system, you're able to stay present in their world until the timing aligns. So if you're able to reach those 100 leads, you'll be able to convert 3 to 5% of them. But over time, you should be able to convert 100% of them. So we need to look at signals. And every lead that comes in, you get in front of, we need to score them. So if we have, there are essentially three segments: cold, warm, and hot. You can see this is the scoring system that we use and we recommend to our clients. Every action essentially shows a different level of intent. If they open an email versus they reply to an email, very different level of engagement. And so we want to be tracking these. And now with AI and some automation tools, it's actually really easy to do this automatically. So you're not in there in your CRM doing the math. You can be like, oh, this person has opened 3 emails. That's plus three. Or they replied to an email, they downloaded resources, right? And so you want to keep track. And as that person racks up their score, they move through the cold, warm, and hot segment. And the next level of that is building a nurturing system based on each one. So we have a nurturing system for cold, which is going to be more top of funnel resources that we're sending to them. We have a nurture system for warm, someone who has, maybe engaged with a few resources, right? They're closer to your orbit. They are closer to make a purchasing decision. So we want to send them a different nurturing sequence that speaks to more of a informed buyer or someone who is more actively making a decision in that process. And then a hot is like you're picking up the phone, calling them immediately. This person is showing high intent and downloading multiple resources within a 30-day window. And we want to be sending them case studies to show we can do this for you. We can do this for you. And so if you build this evergreen nurture system and it's built once, all you have to do is keep adding new resources to it. And you need to keep bringing more and more people into your orbit. So what does that look like? So we like to use a 20-day email nurture system. And essentially from any of those 4 channels that we're doing out, we're reaching new people from, we want to get them into our system. And so a lead enters the system from any of our 4 channels. We check what segment they're in. Probably should have put a these are assuming these people are qualified. There's a qualification step here because we don't want to just be blowing through email. So making sure they're qualified, they enter the system. Then based off of the signals that we have access to, are they cold? Are they warm? Are they hot? Then we send them down the email track and we deliver the next email in the sequence and we're tracking engagement along the way. So opens, click rate, reply, page visits, downloads, all of those things you can track via your CRM. And if set up correctly, can be all automated and monitor as they move through those different segments. And essentially what happens is after the 20 emails system expires or ends, start them right back at the beginning. The key to this is always give people a way to opt out because we don't want to be wasting your time. If it's not right, if they're not resonating, that's fine. We're not trying to hold anyone captive. And so if we're building this correctly, again, our entire goal is to just bring more qualified people into our orbit. Now you can kind of, add layers to this. This is obviously just talking about email. But if you layer that meta retargeting or LinkedIn retargeting on top of it, it's another way to kind of stay top of mind and stay keeping people engaged within your orbit. The nice thing about this is you no longer digging through your CRM. I'm trying to understand who you should be reaching out to and who not to. The system tells you who's ready to buy. And so your sales team knows exactly who to reach out to and when without having to monitor all these contacts manually. We have their score. If we are running ads, we have their custom audience that's updating in real time. Another layer of this is like, let's look at all the resources that they downloaded. Let's look at the content that they've engaged with. We can probably infer what their pain point is. And so when we do our warm outreach, we already know what they're experiencing. We just have to provide the solution and show them that we're capable of doing it, which takes us to the booking system. Because we want to do warm outreach, but we also want to book them. And a lot of people just have people book and that's it, which is fine. And like if you're just starting, that's totally sufficient. But some ways to kind of level this up and to continue to engage and build that trust and value throughout the process. We can set up a booking form, which obviously collects their information, adding some additional questions so you can go into that meeting more prepared. Again, this is kind of table stakes, but a lot of people forget to do this. It also helps you filter out non-serious leads, and you can redirect them to different resources if they're not qualified. And then for those who are qualified, redirect them to a custom landing page. This is where a VSL or a video sales letter is really effective, right? Give them more confidence, positively reinforce them for booking that call. Um, again, if you have an abundance of leads, add more friction. If you have not enough leads, reduce the amount of friction. It's kind of the general rule of thumb. And so if you are really good at bringing people into your orbit and you're really good about getting, people booking calls, you might want to add some additional friction, which would be like a homework questionnaire, which isn't just in through the lens of adding more friction, but it also helps you go into that call more prepared. So adding some specific 3 to 5 questions that they get after booking gathers more context for the sales rep or you if you're the founder doing sales calls. Um, you're also increasing their psychological investment, which a lot of people are worried about adding too much friction, and there's good friction and there's bad friction. But it's the same thing as getting someone bought into your process. And so if they fill out this questionnaire, they are psychologically saying, I am more engaged in this. And when they show up to the call, they're much more likely to close and actually engage with your product or service. Also, adding some pre meeting email sequences, send some case studies, send some additional methodology breakdown before. So you're not spending that time um, on the call going through that. And if you send it the day of, it kind of gets it's a nice reminder. It's a nice way to remind someone about the meeting if you're dealing with no shows, but it also gives them, something that they can dissect and kind of have top of mind going into the meeting. A lot of people get rubbed the wrong way with no shows. You know, no show recovery is a great way to save 20 to 30% of the meetings that people are missing. Send them back into a flow. Have a no show recovery email flow. That should be very, very specific on education, right? You want to get that they were already there, they were already on the line, they were convinced. And so we want to just pump out more value and more educational videos sequentially. And if they don't rebook from that 5 sequence, send them back into the 20-day nurture. Once you have the meeting, make sure you're routing them somewhere. So they're either going to the next stage. Please book that next meeting on that first sales call. And if they're not ready for that second meeting or they lag or they, you know, stall in some way, that's great. Re-enroll them back in that 20-day nurture just to make sure you don't lose them as a as an individual and you're keeping them again within your orbit. Some automations that we can do here. I think I talked through it already. Sorry, I'm just trying to be mindful of time because I want to make sure I get to your questions that I see coming through. So what we've done is we've built this full B2B loop. And this is how all the frameworks connect and become this self-reinforcing system. And so a lot of people are doing cold outreach and content and just asking for a call right away without this like warm connection. And if you haven't, you know, if you take anything away from this webinar, it's that like majority of people aren't doing this kind of like warm connection information. That is where your highest leverage is. You have to build that trust. You have to build that authenticity. And so, yeah, most people have the top and bottom. Most people are generating leads, cold outreach, content ads, full top of system, and then trying to push people to the bottom right away. And remember, if only 5% of people are ready to buy right away, you're missing out on that 95%. And where you win that 95% is in this evergreen nurture section, this missing layer. And this is where everything compounds and where everything comes together. All right. Um, I am going to leave this up as I answer some questions because I've seen a few of these come through Of course, if you want personalized help on this, if you want help getting this installed within your business, any of these systems, feel free to reach out here, scan the QR code. I'm taking, strategy sessions. All right, let's go through some questions. So Kenneth asks, should we share a LinkedIn post in our landing page in order to connect that presence that need reference? Keep us in their mind and tag us as the reference. Share our LinkedIn post in our landing page. Are you talking about embedding the post specifically in the landing page? If that's the question, I would probably say not necessarily. What's more impactful is making sure there's testimonials or social proof on that landing page from past clients. Once they've already opted in through your content and they've made it to a landing page, at that point, they don't need to see more content from you. They need to see other people talking about how great your service or your product delivered value to them. Because at that point, they want to see individuals who were in a similar experience to show and reinforce that you can provide a similar result to them. If you were running ads, and maybe this is what you're asking, if you're running ads, you do want to have parity between the problem and the headline that you have in your ad and what you see on the landing page, right? So if you say, hey, are you struggling to get leads for your business? On the landing page, it shouldn't be talking about saving time. It should be talking about getting leads for your business. You do want to have parity between those two things. Matt asks, what do you run your evergreen system on? Um, there's so many tools for marketing and nurturing. Step one is set up your CRM. HubSpot has like email marketing built in. If you're not using HubSpot, uh, I use a CRM called Attio, and I use a third party tool called Loops for email marketing. They're also great for product marketing. There's also Active Campaign. They all kind of work the same. It's always just like what works with your tech stack best. And so but the key is having your CRM be the central hub of all information and then having it route people based off of their trust score and their velocity. And then from there, being able to send them the right email sequences and whatever tool you do that in doesn't really matter. I personally use Loops if that is helpful to you. David asks, do you have a real world example that worked well that you can share? David, if you could add some clarity on what there's tons of real world examples, but I just am not sure of what you're specifically asking there. So if you want me to be specific on that, I'm happy to. Jared, yeah, I think we were scheduled for 45. I like to go over, especially if there's questions. So let's say we get this up and running. The biggest thing to know is like all of this stuff takes time. If you're building a business, build a strong foundation, and it's going to feel slow at first. Building your resources, getting consistent with content, you'll start seeing some more warm connections come through. Your nurturing system's more effective. You're going to keep optimizing that. And between 6 and 12 months, it's going to be game changer. That's where the flywheel really takes off. And as anything that compounds, it gets better with time. Kenneth, how do you see using Notion for cold email outreach through custom agents? I don't know. I don't think I would use Notion for cold email at the moment. I know they're building their agent features. That's helped us internally with like some project management. But as far as I'm concerned, they don't connect to external tools. What we use Notion for is our resource hub. So we have a database of all of our resources. Well, that's cool. Thank you for letting me know about that. I think with all of these agent tools, whether you build agents in Relay or Claude Code or Notion or N8N, whatever you use, it doesn't really matter as long as it works again within your tech stack. Don't just like pile on software costs to pile on software costs. with any kind of building a tech stack. Like the more streamlined it can be and the more it talks to each other, the better. And so if you do have all of your resources in Notion and Notion does have a way to connect to like instantly for cold email outreach, heck yeah, that's awesome. Use it. What I would do is still those build a database in Notion of all your resources. And then depending on where people are in the stage of awareness and how close they are to your orbit, you can automatically trigger or train the agent to know what resources to send at different stages. So you might just be removing one of those steps if you build the agent correctly in Notion. That's cool though. Thank you for letting me know about that, Kenneth. Notion's really coming in with the AI game. Well, thank you guys, everyone. Happy to stay on for a couple more minutes and answer additional questions. Some things to keep an eye out for. Feel free to book time with me. Go to gotcatalyst.com. You can book some time there. Happy to answer any of your questions directly. If you just want weekly insights directly to your inbox, we have our newsletter, The Growth Playbook, which you can subscribe to here on Beehive. And then, as always, I do these sessions every week on Maven. If there's a specific topic you're trying to understand or trying to learn more about, feel free to let me know. I talk about growth, AI, content, go to market, all the buzzwords, but we try to stay on top of things and give you guys best practices to be able to grow your business. So, anything you guys want to learn more about, let me know. Thanks, everyone.